Section 2.5, example 1, factoring and solving a quadratic with leading coefficients of 1. Factor and solve the equation x squared plus x minus 6. So what we have to do is I'll go over what I'm calling the star method. If you have a different way of factoring, you could go ahead and use that. You end up with the same solutions, that's completely fine. So what we're looking at is two numbers that multiply to a -6, but add to a +1. So with this star method, you draw an X, two numbers that multiply to a -6, but add to a +1. So now looking at factors of 6, we have 1 times 6, 2 times 3, 3 times 2, which we already have that combination up here. It being a negative number, one of these has to be negative. So -1 and 6, if we were to add those two to each other, because again, we're trying to multiply here, but add to get this number. So if we make then 1 negative, so -1 plus 6, this gives us 5. So it looks like this is not going to be our pair. And this one here, we have 2 and 3. So if we have a -2 plus 3, that gives us a +1, which is exactly what we need. But just to make sure, let's look at the opposite. +2 plus a -3, that gives us -1. We actually need a +1 in order to satisfy this. So it looks like it's going to be that combination. So 2 and 3, where 2 is the -1. And now coming back to this equation, we found our two values that are going to help us solve this. Instead of writing this x as just x, I'm going to write it as a combination of -2x plus +3x. So x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 6 equals 0. Notice that from here, we didn't change any of the values. We're just replacing our middle term or our b term with these two values. And now from here, what we're going to do is group. We're going to factor by grouping. So we're going to group the first two terms together and the second two terms together, making sure that we have a plus here in the middle. Because if we had a minus here, this negative is being distributed to those two terms there. And from here, we're going to factor as much as we can from the first group and as much as we can from the second group. So food for thought, we always want a positive value here. And here we have that positive value. In this group here, the most that we could factor out is an x. We can't factor out any like numerical value, so we're just going to factor out that x. And when we factor out an x, we're kind of dividing these values by the part we're factoring out. So x squared divided by x is going to give us just x. So for that first part, it's going to be x. X, we have that -2x divided by x is just going to give us a -2. So -2 here, close the parentheses, plus, and we're going to factor as much as we can from the second group. So numerically, I see both of these numbers are divisible by 3. Factoring out a 3 is going to leave us with a positive value here, so that's perfect. Variable wise, we can't factor any of that out, so we're just going to leave that 3 here. Then we have 3x divided by 3. That's going to give us just x. And we have a -6 divided by 3. That's going to leave us with a -2. And now I'm going to treat each of these little groups as terms. And I notice that within those two terms, I have that x minus 2 that I could factor out. So from those two, I'm factoring out an x minus 2. And when we factor it out from here, the x minus 2 divides out. So we're left with x here. When we divide the x minus 2 here, we're left with a +3, so +3 equals 0. And now this is what makes factoring so much fun, is now we have this equation that we could easily solve for. Up here, we would have had to find the perfect scenario where we would equal 6, or where like the sum of this left side was equal to 0. But coming down here, we have two places where it's going to equal 0. Since anything times 0 is always going to be 0, the product here is going to equal 0 when this part is equal to 0. And then we have some random value here. And it's also going to equal 0 when this value is equal to 0 and some random value here. So let's see where that happens. So we're going to set both parts equal to 0. X minus 2 equals 0. And also over here at x plus 3 equals 0. And let's solve. So plus 2 plus 2. X is equal to 2. That's one of our solutions. Minus 3 minus 3. X is equal to a negative 3. And there you go. Those are our two solutions for this quadratic function or quadratic equation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, bye.